Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back to the garden. We are out here again today with another kind of quick one, but kind of one that I get a lot of questions about. We're actually out here in the unheated hoop house. Question number one is, do you have any heat in the hoop house? No, this is all solar heated. I'm sure there are many ways that I could add some additional heating to this, but for the sake of just simplicity, this is just an unheated hoop house. No fancy bells or whistles going on here in this hoop house. So today I wanted to talk a little bit with you guys about my kind of routine for overwintering these hardy annual flowers. And if you're not a flower grower or you don't want to grow flowers, this of course would also apply to the home vegetable garden as well. There are so many cool season vegetables that are absolutely perfect candidates to grow in a low tunnel to extend the season or even to overwinter with that added protection. That's something that I definitely want to do in the future that I'd be really looking forward to doing. But right now it's just kind of, prohibited me from doing it just because I don't have much space. As I've mentioned in previous videos, we've recently had a really cold snap here. We've had temperatures down to, I think it was -2 or -3 degrees Fahrenheit as the lows. And as you can imagine, in trying to grow flowers or food or anything else, those are pretty extreme cold temperatures. I know a lot of people get a lot colder temperatures, but for me where I am, those are pretty extreme cold temperatures. So I wanted to show you guys what I am doing in the hoop house and outside of the hoop house to help kind of regulate the temperature for these tunnels and to hopefully keep all our plants nice and healthy and get the best growth as we can. As always, I should say, I am not an expert. I'm not a professional grower. I don't have a degree in horticulture or anything like that. I am just some person with a backyard and some person with a garden. So I'm always welcome to hear, any comments or suggestions you guys have or experiences you have down in the comments below. That's one of my favorite parts of doing this channel, is that I get to learn so much from you guys and get really to know more about how you grow things where you live. In the hoop house throughout the winter, I generally keep this hoop house closed. The same also goes for my unheated low tunnels that are out in the yard. This plastic, even though it's a 6mm plastic, it's pretty cheap. Even though this seems like a thin plastic, this stuff heats up insanely fast when the sun is out. So in general, as a general guideline, I like to keep the hoop house closed on days where it is, in the low 20s or, the teens. I am always going to keep the hoop house closed. Now, when it starts to creep into the 30s, and I'm talking about 30-degree Fahrenheit temperatures, that's when more likely I'm going to start opening the ends of the hoop house to vent this a little bit. The reason I want to do this, even though it's about 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside, the temperatures in that hoop house can easily climb to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit on a sunny day. Really maintaining and regulating the temperatures on sunny days is so important, especially once we hit the coldest part of the winter here where I am, with highs in the teens and 20s each day. The sunshine is going to be an integral part of keeping that ground warm, keeping our plantings warm, and just keeping everything healthy overall in the hoop house. Now, you might be wondering, okay, well, what do I do if it is cloudy or overcast? When it is cloudy, this hoop house will continue to gain some energy from the sun and warm up a little bit, but it is nowhere near the extent to where, when the hoop house is closed on a sunny day, nowhere near it. So in general, anytime the temperatures are low, the teens, the 20s, and even, 32 degrees, I'm going to leave the hoop house closed on these days on both ends. If it is cloudy and the temperature climbs above 32 degrees, I might leave it closed, but a lot of that depends on the forecast. So if it's, say, 46 degrees one day, it's cloudy, it's dreary, it's yucky, but it's 46 degrees. If the next week or so has consistent temperatures of 46 degrees, I'll go ahead and open the hoop house a little bit, crack it, just to make sure too much heat doesn't build up in there. Get some good airflow, just kind of refresh things. But if it's, for example, 46 degrees today, but the next day it's supposed to get much, much colder and go to 20 degrees, I'm not going to open that hoop house. I want to kind of preserve that heat as best I can for the plants. Obviously, I've been talking about what's going on outside the hoop house, whether or not I'm going to open or close it, but let's take a look inside the hoop house and see what's going on in there. So inside this hoop house, I have this Agribon 30 row cover. I think it gives, I think they say 4 degrees of frost protection. I can't attest to that or anything like that, but that's what it says when I bought it. This row cover is extremely important in keeping frost off our plants because, you know, this is just a hoop house from PVC. It's nothing fancy. I don't have any kind of ventilation fans or anything in here. When that humidity does build, there is going to be condensation on the roof of it. That condensation will freeze. There is a definite freeze cycle that goes on inside this hoop house, obviously to a lesser degree than outside, but that still, nonetheless, it's going on. Anytime that the predicted low temperature is set to fall below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, I make sure to cover up these plants with this frost blanket. While that seems pretty cut and dry, there are some things to take into consideration. If it's a bright sunny day, obviously I don't need the frost blanket during the day because the sun is going to warm inside that hoop house and the inside temperature is going to be well above 32 even if it's 32 outside. So deciding whether or not to cover the plants with the row cover really depends on knowing what the temperature is inside the hoop house and how much that's going to fluctuate, you know, overnight during the day, because even though this is getting very warm during the day, those temperatures are going to fluctuate quite a lot and dip down. They can dip down pretty low overnight or until the sun comes up the next morning, that kind of thing. So it really is kind of a process of trial and error, but as a general rule of thumb, these plants are covered anytime it is below 32 degrees. For me, that especially applies to nighttime temperatures. Even though we are covering the plants, this row cover does allow sunlight to come through. I think this is, it lets through 80% of light. Don't quote me on that for this exact type of Agribon. I'm not exactly sure. But this is the general process that I use. The same process also applies to my low tunnels. You know, on days that it's getting too hot, I might have to vent the low tunnels. Days that it's getting really cold, I might have to use, you know, the additional row cover with the low tunnels. And again, a lot of it has to do with exactly what plants you're growing in the hoop house. Different flowering plants and different cold hardy vegetables, they all have different thresholds for their degree in which they are cold tolerant and able to handle the frost. So it really just depends on what you're growing, where you're growing it, and learning how to garden in your conditions so that you can best adapt to get the healthiest crops possible. I really hope that this was somehow helpful. I'm not quite sure if it was. I get a lot of questions about how I go about covering and uncovering and when I decide to do that and everything. So I wanted to try to make as best a video as possible. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. I try to get to the comments at least once a week. Sometimes I get caught up with work and it might be a little bit longer, but I do try to answer those. If you're new to the channel and this is your first video, feel free to hit subscribe. We'd love to have you. I'm making garden videos, cut flower videos, all kinds of different stuff. Sometimes I do random DIY projects, so if you like a little bit of surprise, you might like this channel. We're trying to make it to 10,000 subscribers this year. I hope that you guys are having such an amazing day, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.